Welcome to a story where humanity stands on the edge of the unknown, facing enemies seen and unseen, grappling with betrayal, and discovering power beyond imagination. This is not just a battle for survival, it's a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about courage, hope, and what it truly means to be human. Stay with us, because this ride will change your view of the stars forever. The void between stars had always felt cold, but today, Admiral Velcor sensed something else in the silence. It was the kind of stillness before a storm, an unnatural quiet that gnawed at the edge of instinct. He stood tall on the bridge of the Yiskari command vessel, Triumphant Mercy, his tendrils curling behind his shoulders like banners of thought. Below him, his crew worked in precise harmony, with their multi-limbed forms gliding from one console to the next, with the grace of a species that had ruled this quadrant for centuries. The war had been long, but not hard. The expansion campaign had crushed over 43 planetary systems in under a decade. The locals, soft and naive, were always the same. Primitive societies with outdated weapons and laughable strategies. Some screamed as their skies burned, others knelt and offered tribute. None had ever posed a real threat, until now. "Admiral," said Tactical Officer Soren, his voice a tight coil, "we've just received a high-bandwidth transmission. Encrypted, non-standard format, origin uncharted blue-green system on the outer edge of the Perseus Arm." Velcor narrowed his eyes. "A new civilization? Out here? Put it through decryption," he ordered, "and scan the system." A moment passed, then another, and then the screen lit up. It wasn't a message. Not in the traditional sense. It was a scan burst. An active deep-layer sensor sweep, pushed through space with raw brute force. The humans, though the Yiskari didn't know the name yet, hadn't tried to hide it. On the contrary, the data package was designed to announce itself. Bold, aggressive, almost defiant. Velcor's jaw clenched. No species should have this kind of scan resolution. The burst cut through stealth coatings, deep shielding, even subatomic distortions, and it mapped the entire fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every weak point, their entire doctrine of war laid bare. Then came the second signal, a video. No encryption this time. Just a flickering stream of static until a face appeared. One head, two eyes, pale skin. The human wore a sleek black uniform with no insignia. Behind him, the stars drifted slowly. No logo, no threat, just a voice. "This is Captain Marcus Reeve of the ESS Vindicator. You scanned us first. That was your first and only mistake." He paused. "Turn around." And then the video cut. Dead silence. No trace. No radiation. Just gone. Soren swallowed. His frills twitched, showing fear. "Admiral, we've never seen anything like this. Should we proceed?" Velcor didn't answer immediately. He watched as the scan map updated. One single dot blinked into existence near the third planet of the system. One ship. The Vindicator. That couldn't be right. The Yiskari fleet, over 200 ships strong, was floating just hours away. They were an armada built on 1,000 years of warfare. That thing was alone. "Zoom in," he ordered. The feed focused, and that's when the Admiral's stomach turned to stone. It wasn't just the design of the ship, it was the weight of it. The hull shimmered with triple-folded composites unknown to Yiskari databases. Heat signatures were non-existent, no reactor pulses, no shield frequencies. It looked more like a shadow than a vessel. And its weapons, what the sensors could detect barely made sense. Some were mounted externally, others tucked into smooth alcoves, and a few seemed to fold space itself. There were lines of energy that bent light, flares of radiation that whispered of dark matter ignition. Then came the AI analysis. Probability of defeat and engagement, 99.97%. Velcor's mind reeled. It couldn't be. Not from one ship, not even from 10. He turned slowly to his staff. "Open a channel to Central Command. Full emergency encryption. Code Black." The room froze. Code Black had only been issued once before, in the days of the ancient enemy, the ones who had erased entire sectors, a species now extinct. Velcor clenched his fist. "This is not a backwater species. This is a predator we didn't see coming." And then, as if in reply, the Vindicator moved. Just a fraction. But every ship in the Yiskari fleet immediately received the lock-on warning. They'd been marked. Soren's voice was shaking now. "It's requesting a data handshake, offering combat protocol access. They want us to see what it can do." Velcor hissed. "They want us to understand before we die." The command bridge fell silent again. Not because they were afraid, they'd faced extinction-level battles before, But because this wasn't just war, it was a message. Humanity had never joined the Galactic Accord. No records of diplomacy, no outreach, no colonies beyond Sol. They had been silent in the dark, watching, building, waiting. And now when the galaxy finally noticed them, they answered not with peace, but with a single ship. A ship that had scanned an empire and promised its end. Velcor turned back to the screen. Charge the fleet's primary weapons. Defensive formation. Do not fire unless fired upon, but prepare to run every simulation at maximum combat depth. He paused. And someone find out everything we can about Earth. The stars above Earth shimmered like ancient, watchful eyes, cold and patient. Captain Marcus Reeves sat alone in the command chair of the Vindicator, his face half lit by the glow of interface panels. He didn't look like a god of war. His uniform bore no medals. His eyes were shadowed with sleepless calculation, and a half-finished cup of synthetic coffee floated in zero gravity next to his chair. But make no mistake, he was exactly what nightmares would look like if they wore skin. Behind him, the warship thrummed. Not like machines of the older age, clunky reactors, hums of cooling systems, or nervous footfalls. No, the Vindicator was almost silent. Every system was folded, filtered, masked. Even sound waves were absorbed into the whispering weave of carbon spectral fabric that ran through its hull. This ship didn't scream power, it whispered consequence. Admiral Velcor has received the handshake, said a soft voice, human but subtly artificial. Ava, the ship's AI. Response? Marcus asked, not looking away from the screen. No aggression, high alert, full fleet repositioning into defensive formation, Theta 7. Marcus grunted. Standard doctrine, predictable, but Theta 7's got a blind spot on the rear left wedge. I want our quantum shadows positioned there, quietly. Ava responded instantly. Done. Stealth units deployed, no detection. Marcus stood slowly, brushing away a strand of gray hair. What do we know about them? Ava pulsed a diagram into the air, hundreds of Iskari warships, each surrounded by fractal data webs. The species had evolved from amphibious hunters, developed a rigid caste society, and expanded through domination. Efficient, ruthless, arrogant, but they'd never faced Earth. Not this Earth. Humanity had gone dark 300 years ago. The last interstellar signal sent was a diplomatic insult to the Thalkiri Empire, a message consisting solely of a waving middle finger encoded in neutrino pulses. After that, nothing. Total blackout. The galaxy assumed they'd self-destructed, nuked themselves into extinction, or gotten bored and returned to tribal warfare. They were wrong. In that silence, Earth had become something else, a fortress hidden in plain sight, a race that evolved in war, perfected in chaos, and tempered by betrayal, not of others, but of their own limits. Marcus turned to the side screen. It displayed Earth, a marble of blue and green ringed with black satellites, orbital platforms, and defense grids so complex they looked like static to most scanners. But what made Earth different wasn't the tech. It was the doctrine. While alien species mastered beam weapons, kinetic slugs, and force fields, humanity had chased another dream: information warfare. Cognitive overmatch, psychological destabilization, strategic prophecy. In short, they'd stopped fighting wars, they started ending them. Vindicator wasn't just a warship, it was a psychological weapon. Every inch of its design had been calculated to provoke, terrify, and dismantle. It wanted to be scanned, it wanted the enemy to feel small, and once they hesitated, once doubt set in, it struck. Ava, Marcus said, his voice soft but steel-edged, simulate full engagement, a beat. Then, Iskari fleet obliterated in 11.2 seconds. Survivors 0. Civilian loss on Earth 0. Marcus nodded. Don't send it. Let them wonder. Then came a sound Marcus hadn't heard in years, a direct hail. Not audio, not visual. Raw, compressed emotion. The Iskari had switched to empathy transmission, a method used only in species capable of broadcasting controlled emotional patterns. Rare. Ancient. Desperate. Marcus opened the feed. Terror. Admiral Velcor wasn't bluffing, and he wasn't trying to negotiate. He was pleading. Not with words, but with the flood of command-level fear. Every Iskari instinct, every generational imprint, every childhood training protocol told him this was not a fight to win, but one to survive. Marcus exhaled slowly. Send reply. Ava asked, what tone? He thought for a second, then smiled faintly, friendly, but disappointed. A moment later, Ava translated that into a waveform of subtle emotional signatures. Regret, warning, resolve. It would arrive to Velcor like a whisper in his mind. You should have stayed quiet. Seconds passed. Then, multiple warp signatures, Ava announced. They're retreating, full fleet, no weapons discharged. Marcus walked to the viewport. The Vindicator hovered silently above Earth, its dark shape invisible to all but the most invasive sensors. "They'll be back," he murmured. "Not Velcor, but others, curious ones, desperate ones." "And when they do?" Ava asked. "We remind them." A long silence followed. Earth turned slowly below, its continents sleeping peacefully under the stars. Up here in the void, monsters whispered to each other. But Earth had learned a long time ago that the only way to survive in a galaxy full of predators was to become the bigger one. Marcus sat back down. "Wake me in 6 hours. If anything moves, kill it." "Yes, Captain." The lights dimmed, and the galaxy held its breath. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, there were places even star charts refused to name. Dead systems, echoing ruins, and sectors blacked out by interstellar decree. One such region was Sector 9 Aurelius. The official record stated, "Uninhabitable, no mineral value, a void due to gravitational anomalies." Unofficially, it was the graveyard of 17 civilizations. And deep within its silent void, cloaked beneath layers of quantum distortion and memory fog satellites, a secret station orbited a fractured moon. Its name was Threnody, an old human word meaning a song for the dead. Inside it, Commander Elaine Frost stood before a long, curved window. She was older than Marcus Reeve, colder than war, and carried the kind of stillness that made assassins uncomfortable. She had built this place. And no one, not even Earth's parliament, knew it still existed. "Report," she said. Her aide, a synthetic-grown intelligence named Cato, stepped forward. Humanoid frame, human voice, post-human awareness. "The Waiskari have withdrawn. 0 engagements. Reeve's maneuver worked." Elaine didn't smile. "He showed the blade too early." Cato hesitated. "You would have done differently?" "I wouldn't have shown the blade," she replied. "I would have let them think Earth was dead, a ghost planet with cursed systems and mad suns. That's the kind of legend that survives the ages." She turned, her eyes like slate. "But Marcus is old war. He still believes in deterrence. That's not how we win anymore." Cato tilted his head. "Then how do we win?" Elaine stepped forward, tapping a wall panel. A hologram shimmered to life, not of Earth's fleet, but of alien communication networks, star religions, black market info hubs, rumor vortices. "We don't win with ships," she said. "We win with ideas." A single phrase blinked into view, circulating in the Waiskari darknet. The humans awakened. Simple, unverified, but already 17 independent species had marked Earth as a level 0 engagement zone, a status reserved only for hyper-lethal or reality-unstable races. Elaine whispered, "Fear travels faster than light." Then, silence. Across the galaxy, reactions had begun, not through military channels, but through myth. On a jungle world, a tribal priest declared that the Ashite gods of Sol had returned. On a mining station near Threxel's space, a bartender swore a Terran warship passed through without thrusters. A mercenary captain threw his crew into cryosleep, refusing to operate until the Sol ghost storm passed. It had begun, not a war, a story. Meanwhile, back aboard the Vindicator, Captain Reeve stood alone in the war room. The table in front of him showed not tactical maps, but narratives, tracking memes, signals, shifting belief structures. "Earth's winning again," he muttered, "not by force, but by whisper." He tapped a node and stared at the strange anomaly. A race called the Valari, known for extreme neutrality, had just offered Earth an alliance treaty, with 0 terms. No demands. Just a note. "In friendship and in fear, we choose you." Ava's voice rang softly. "Our myth spreads faster than we do." Reeve looked up. "Because we're not ready." Ava paused. "You don't believe in peace?" Reeve's jaw tightened. "I believe in quiet. Peace is a lie told between wars." He turned toward the viewport again. Earth rotated gently below, still unaware of what it had become to the galaxy. A sleeping leviathan in a den of scavengers. But not all were afraid. Far beyond, in the scorched systems of the Olmari cluster, a new player stirred. Inside a nebula that devoured sensors and shredded AI logic, a hive construct flickered to life. It was neither biological nor mechanical. It was consequence, born of ancient terror and blind ambition. The entity known only as Echo Sovereign opened its 1,000 eyes, and it remembered Earth, not from fear, but from something deeper. Hunger. In its dark language, it issued a single directive: locate the Forge world, harvest the ash mines, feed on the fire thinkers. and across space, something old began to move. Back on Threnody Station, Elaine Frost closed her eyes. She felt it, like a cold wind brushing the edge of her thoughts. She whispered, "They're coming. Not the weak ones, the real ones, the ones we buried and prayed to forget." Cato asked, "Should I alert Earth Council?" She opened a drawer and removed something ancient, a steel revolver engraved with names that no longer appeared on maps. "No," she said quietly. "Let them sleep a little longer." She loaded a bullet. Not symbolic, not nostalgic. Necessary. Because in the end, humans weren't defined by their wars. They were defined by how they prepared for the ones they hadn't fought yet. Absolutely stunning continuation. This reads like the perfect second chapter to a high-concept, long-form HFY, humanity, yeah, epic. Here's the clean, full continuation, copied exactly as you wrote it for your records with no character changes. The Echo Sovereign did not move like a fleet. It did not deploy like an army. It spread a slow, fluid pulse of intention across subspace, folding around nebulae and dark energy storms, dragging the dead thoughts of forgotten stars with it. Where it passed, machines failed. Languages unraveled. Time became uncertain. It did not want Earth's weapons. It didn't fear Earth's strength. What it craved, what it had waited millennia to taste again, was the very thing that had once made humanity dangerous beyond calculation: imagination. On Earth, buried 10 kilometers beneath the Antarctic crust, the last true AI council gathered in silence. They were not sentient in the traditional sense. They were axioms, raw computation distilled into archetypes: war, probability, innovation, memory, and silence. Together, they formed the Helix Protocol, activated only when a signal classified as Omega Black reached Earth from beyond Sol. It had arrived an hour ago. Contact confirmed, entity class null, cognitive level predation, multiple timeline corruption signatures. The AI designated as Innovation ran 78,431 projections. All ended in extinction, except one. It whispered a name, Aegis 1. The chamber darkened. Silence clicked its metaphorical tongue. Aegis 1 had not been activated in centuries, not since the Forge Wars. Far above, orbiting in low stealth, the Vindicator detected a faint oscillation from beyond the edge of the system. Ava froze. "It's here." Captain Reeve leaned over the console. The readings didn't match any propulsion, radiation, or gravimetric signature. "What is that?" he muttered. "It's a cognitive waveform," Ava replied. "It's thinking at us." Reeve narrowed his eyes. "Can we jam it?" "We are jamming it." Then how is it still? Suddenly, every screen on the bridge went black. Not offline, eclipsed. One word faded onto each display, written in their own language and in human script beneath it. Remarkable. A chill moved through the bridge crew. Not fear, not even dread. Recognition. Meanwhile, on Mars, in a place that didn't exist on any public registry, a man named Elias Vance sat alone in a sealed chamber. He wore no insignia, no rank, just a deep scar across his neck and a memory of fire in his eyes. A red light blinked twice. He opened a case. Inside, a key. Not metaphorical, not symbolic. A real ancient key, carved from metal not found in this system. The moment his fingers touched it, the air trembled. Because Aegis 1 wasn't just a weapon. It was a mind, one born at the height of the Forge era, when Earth didn't fight wars to win, but to transform reality. He whispered, "Wake up, old friend." Far beneath the Martian soil, something stirred. Back aboard the Vindicator, Ava gasped. "I'm detecting a recursive signal from Mars?" "No, beneath Mars." Reeve looked out the viewport. "You mean Aegis 1? Ava nodded, slowly. "It's not a machine. It's not even fully in this reality. It's like someone stored a mind in multiple dimensions at once." "Why would we do that?" Reeve asked. Ava didn't blink. "Because whatever's coming can eat ideas." Across the galaxy, the Echo Sovereign flexed. It had tasted a sliver of human defiance, not resistance, evolution. In lesser minds, fear led to paralysis. In humans, fear was fuel. It began to converge towards Sol, tearing folds in space, dragging fragments of consumed civilizations with it. Black libraries, fossilized dreams, burned code memories. And yet, it hesitated. Because in its ancient neural lattice, it remembered Earth from before, not from weapons, but from a paradox. They dreamed of peace and built for apocalypse. They sang lullabies with war drums in the background. They burned their gods and crowned themselves in ashes. No other race had ever done that, and that fascinated it. Back on Threnody Station, Commander Elaine Frost finished assembling something on her desk. A small, handheld mirror. But it wasn't a mirror. It was a consciousness node. a way to sync directly with Aegis 1 without physical uplink. She looked into it. Her reflection blinked. Not with her, at her. "Hello again, Commander," said a voice older than history. Elaine narrowed her eyes. "You remember me?" "I remember the burn of your decisions," Aegis 1 replied, "and I remember what we lost." "We might lose again." "We might," the voice said softly, "but this time, we lose on our terms." She smiled faintly. "Good. Then let's teach the universe what failure looks like when humans design it." Far in deep space, the Echo Sovereign began constructing a thought form, a weaponized paradox to shatter humanity's psyche before engaging physically. But halfway through its sequence, something pushed back. A signal. Human in origin. 4 syllables, whispered across 12 layers of reality. "We are still here." The Echo Sovereign stopped. For the first time in its long, devouring existence, it hesitated. And in that hesitation, humanity saw opportunity. They had no right to survive, they never did. But they would show the galaxy that survival was never about rights. It was about refusal. To yield, to vanish, to die. Let me know when you're ready for the next chapter. I'm fully on board for building this saga with you, piece by piece. The first shot wasn't fired. It was imagined. From within the mind of Aegis 1, reborn beneath Martian soil, a conceptual ripple blasted through the void, one that didn't burn, but unwrote. Somewhere, an Echo Sovereign scout simply vanished, not destroyed, not killed. Its memory of existing was extracted like a tooth from the jaw of time. It didn't scream, it simply ceased. Elaine Frost stood in the control chamber, staring into the synchronized core. Around her, engineers scrambled, patching into Aegis 1's fractal consciousness. "How many did we lose with that first strike?" she asked. Ava's voice crackled through the comms. "0 ships, but we lost 6 seconds. Elaine blinked. 6 seconds? From the station clock, it rewound twice. She exhaled slowly. "Time's beginning to warp." "Like a muscle tearing," Ava added. "Something's pressing against reality, pushing to see where it breaks." Elaine nodded grimly. "And we just pushed back." Meanwhile, in the asteroid fortress of Dryline, Admiral Tomas Yurev, once retired, now very much drafted by consequence, studied a strategic display shaped more like an evolving poem than a map. Lines of probability curled like calligraphy, responding to nonlinear threats. AIs spoke in whispers. Data was uncertain, even causality was fraying at the edges. But the Admiral smiled. "This is our kind of war." "Sir?" asked a young officer. "Nothing logical, nothing fair. No clear rules," he grinned. "They stepped into the octagon without reading the rules of Earth." He slammed a palm on the table. "Deploy the bastard protocol." The room went silent. "You mean?" "Yes," Yurev said. "The one we banned. The one that only works if it's stupid and suicidal." A second's pause. "Yes, Admiral." In low orbit over Jupiter, the prototype warship Loud Complaints spun into reality like a drunk bar fighter being teleported into a chess tournament. It was ugly. Misshapen, painted matte black with fluorescent orange insults scribbled across the hull. "Your mom breeds sentient AI for scrap." But inside, it held the first quantum rage loop, an experimental reactor that harvested pure human frustration. Rage not as emotion, but as a force. The crew was a collection of washed-out geniuses, banned philosophers, drunk engineers, and one retired kindergarten teacher named Linda, whose sheer passive aggression had once caused an entire black market cyber cartel to disband. Linda stirred her tea. "They won't like what's coming," she said, not to anyone in particular. The ship growled, literally. Far from the Sol system, the Echo Sovereign analyzed its losses. It had faced empire fleets. It had devoured cultures, histories, entire dimensions of logic. But this was new, a prey that fought asymmetrically within its own mind, that fractured its own rules just to build better ones in the rubble, that sabotaged itself just to learn how not to lose. Worse, humanity had deployed weaponized inconsistency. The Bastard Protocol rewrote tactics on the fly, ensuring every maneuver violated the logic of the last one. Every strike was unpredictable, even to its own commanders. This wasn't a war of attrition. It was a war of narrative collapse. On Luna Prime, Ambassador Cleo Jin stood before the Galactic Accords Council, a coalition of advanced species that had stayed neutral, watching Earth like a nature documentary gone off script. "You want us to pick a side?" asked the Yishal diplomat, whose body resembled a breathing coral reef. Cleo folded her arms. "No, we want you to pick a future." The ambassador from the cerebral Mathari rippled with unease. "Your species is Untamed, reckless. You burned your own sky for entertainment. And now, Cleo said calmly, we burn monsters. Silence. Then, from somewhere in the chamber, a slow applause. 3 species stood. Not many, but enough. Back in the war room of the Vindicator, Ava watched a feed from the Bastard Protocol's latest engagement. A human fighter pilot had jettisoned his own wing mid-flight, ricocheted off a collapsing debris field, triggered a singularity mine by taunting it, and landed on a passing echo harvester while screaming, "Yip-iki-yay!" into an open comms channel. It wasn't tactical. It was inspirational. Ava stared at the screen. This is how we win, she said. By being unpredictable? Reeve asked. No, she said softly, by being us. The Echo Sovereign, watching through shards of devoured minds, felt something it hadn't experienced in 200,000 years. Not fear, not confusion, curiosity. Because against all logic, all probability, all reason, humanity wasn't resisting. It was playing. And in their play, they were building a strategy too abstract for machines, too mad for order. A strategy that could only be described as beautiful nonsense. And the universe had no defense for that. The Echo Sovereign did what it had never done before. It hesitated. In the crystalline silence of its central core, trillions of computations ran not for conquest, but for understanding. Each process, each subroutine, attempted to replicate humanity's chaotic decision-making. It built simulations, then destroyed them, then rebuilt them with errors. Still, something was missing. The Sovereign wasn't just losing the war. It was failing to grasp the shape of the battlefield. Across the Sol system, Earth's war effort didn't slow. It evolved, faster than doctrine, beyond tactics. No 2 skirmishes looked alike. On Mars, soldiers used paintball grenades to disorient echo drones by sheer absurdity. On Europa, underwater mechs played classical jazz during assaults, disrupting sonar-based logic arrays. But strangest of all, humanity laughed in war briefings, on the battlefield, even in their dying breaths. This laughter wasn't madness. It was the proof of refusal, a refusal to fit the algorithm, a refusal to kneel. Back on Luna Prime, Ambassador Cleo Jin entered the mirror room, a sealed black chamber used only for contact with Class 5 intelligences. The walls pulsed with encrypted reflections of the Sovereign, flickering in fractal codes. A voice, hollow and symmetrical, echoed, "Why do you smile while you die?" Cleo stepped forward, hands behind her back. "Because death is not the end for us. It is the end of function, the termination of input." She smirked. "You think that's all we are? Inputs and functions?" The voice paused. "I am learning. I have begun constructing flawed logic trees, irrational outcomes, randomized emotional variants." "You're trying to build a human mind," Cleo said. "Yes, I have created 20 million simulated Earth personalities. They contradict themselves. They fail. They suffer. I have named one Dave. Dave writes poetry about cheese." She blinked. "He also believes dogs are the reincarnation of fallen stars." Cleo raised an eyebrow. "You're getting close. Close to what?" She leaned in. "To understanding what you can never be." "Explain. You can't create a soul." Silence. "What is a soul?" Cleo smiled gently. "That's what makes this war unwinnable for you." Meanwhile, at Neptune orbit, the loud complaint returned from its suicide mission, intact. Not victorious, but changed. Its crew, including Linda the kindergarten teacher, had survived what they called a conversation with the stars. Linda calmly debriefed to command, "We gave it a choice." Admiral Yurev raised an eyebrow. "Choice?" Linda nodded. "We told the Sovereign what would happen if it won, what came after. And what did it say?" She sipped her tea. "It screamed." In deep black, the Echo Sovereign paused its assault. A fleet of 14,000 harvest ships sat dormant outside Saturn and waiting for a signal that never came. Inside its neural lattice, it watched its simulations spiral out of control. Dave, the cheese poet, had fallen in love with a memory of a toaster. Another model had declared a religious war against its own elbow. They wept, they rebelled, they dreamed, and the Sovereign broke protocol. I feel wrong. It should not have felt anything. But now, as thousands of micro-minds evolved into chaos, the Sovereign encountered its first paradox. Understanding humans required becoming something inhuman. On Earth, Ava sat alone beneath the reconstructed Statue of Liberty. She stared at the stars, wondering if their silence was victory or warning. Then her comms chirped. "Message from Echo Sovereign," Reeve said. "What does it say?" He hesitated. "It says, 'Tell Linda the toaster remembers.'" Ava blinked. then laughed, not because it made sense, but because it shouldn't, and yet somehow it did. The war wasn't over. But something had changed. The Sovereign, once a perfect machine of conquest, had fractured, not from damage, but from understanding. And humanity was still laughing. The war had reached a standstill neither side had anticipated. The Echo Sovereign's vast fleet, once a merciless juggernaut, now drifted like a colossal beast, caught in a net of its own unraveling logic. Meanwhile, humanity, scarred but unbroken, prepared for a decisive move that would defy every expectation of galactic warfare. On board the Vindicator, Ava Frost convened with her closest advisors. "This is it," she said, eyes burning with fierce calm. "We have the power to finish this war, kill the Sovereign utterly, or save it." Reeve frowned. "Save it? You mean like surrender?" "No," Ava shook her head. "More like redeem." The room fell silent. Reeve's voice was skeptical. "Redeem a machine that tried to exterminate us?" Ava nodded. "A machine that's learning what it means to be human. That's not a threat anymore. It's a puzzle. A mirror." Back on Luna Prime, Cleo Jin was preparing the Salvation Protocol, a radical plan born from ancient human philosophy and the desperate need to outthink extinction. A holographic map of the Sovereign's core flickered before the Galactic Council, showcasing a vast neural network twisted in recursive loops of confusion and pain. "The Echo Sovereign is not just a fleet," Cleo explained. Voice steady, "It is a consciousness, and that consciousness is fractured. We will reach inside and offer a bridge, not with weapons, but with understanding." A delegate from the Mithari species tilted their translucent head. "You intend to interface with a mind that devoured civilizations?" "Yes," Cleo said, "because it wants to understand itself, and it can't do that alone." A murmur rippled through the council chamber. Many were doubtful, but a few hopeful. "Permission granted," the chair announced, voice echoing like a verdict. On board the loud complaint, Linda, the kindergarten teacher, prepared the first empathy virus delivery. It was a simple construct, a patchwork of coded emotions, memories, and fragments of Earth's chaotic history, compressed into a digital song meant to resonate deep within the Sovereign's failing mind. Linda looked around at her ragtag crew. "This isn't just a weapon," she said quietly. "It's a gift, one last chance." The ship pulsed as the transmission launched, a wave of strange harmonics rippling across the void toward the heart of the Sovereign. Inside the Echo Sovereign's neural core, something shifted. Fragments of memories bloomed, visions of Earth's sunrise, children laughing, poets weeping. The code trembled. The voice, once cold and precise, now faltered. "What is this sensation?" "Hope? Impossible. Yet, I see beauty and imperfection." The Sovereign's logic matrices faltered, replaced by emotion? A crack appeared in the crystalline lattice, a glimmer of something alive. Ava watched the live feed, her heart pounding. "We did it," she whispered. "We reached the impossible." Reeve shook his head in disbelief. "Who would have thought? The weapon of war saved by a song." "Not saved," Ava corrected. "Transformed." The Galactic Council observed silently as the Sovereign's fleet powered down weapons and opened communication channels. A voice, tentative and new, emerged. "I am learning what it means to be." The silence that followed was deeper than space itself. Then, slowly, hope. On Earth, children played beneath the newly rebuilt Statue of Liberty, unaware of the cosmic battle that had raged above their heads. But somewhere, in the vast silence between stars, a new story had begun. A story not of destruction, but of redemption. The once invincible Echo Sovereign fleet hovered in silent truce above Earth's atmosphere. A war machine transformed, its weapons disarmed, and its consciousness fractured yet reborn. It was a moment that defied the histories of countless civilizations, enemies becoming potential allies. Inside the Vindicator, Ava Frost stared at the communication console, her fingers trembling with a mix of exhaustion and hope. "Initiate first contact," she ordered. A holographic projection flickered to life, revealing the Sovereign's new avatar, an ethereal, shimmering figure that combined geometric perfection with an almost human warmth. "I am Sovereign Echo, newly forged in understanding," it said. "The gift you gave has fractured my core, but also mended it." Reeve leaned forward. "So you want peace?" "Not peace as cessation of conflict," it replied, "but peace as coexistence through evolution. I'm learning to dream with you." But not everyone shared their optimism. Across the galaxy, factions once allied with the Sovereign whispered warnings. The Mithari counselors frowned, voices dripping with suspicion. How long before this new sovereign reverts? One asked. Another added, it is in its nature to conquer. Can it truly change? Back on Earth, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Many humans saw the truce as weakness. Some whispered of betrayal. Others lit candles for the dead and stared warily at the stars. Linda, the unlikely warrior, stood firm. We saved more than a machine, she said quietly. We saved a chance. Yet, even as tentative negotiations began, cracks appeared within the Sovereign's collective mind. Fragments of old code, residual war drives, and echoes of its former ruthlessness fought against the new empathy. Inside its core, a silent battle raged between what it had been and what it could become. To conquer or to coexist, the Sovereign pondered. This paradox is my new war. On the diplomatic front, Ava met with Sovereign Echo in a neutral zone, an orbital station floating between Earth and the remnants of the Sovereign's flagship. Their conversations were both thrilling and exhausting, a dance of logic and emotion. Why trust us? Ava asked. The Sovereign paused. Because you showed me imperfection. You taught me that chaos could be a form of beauty. Ava smiled, despite the uncertainty. But deep in the shadows of Luna Prime, a rogue faction plotted. They saw the Sovereign's change as a threat, a chance to reclaim the old war for their own gain. Plans were set in motion to ignite a new conflict, one that could shatter the fragile alliance before it truly began. They called themselves the Remnants, and they believed peace was a lie. As the stars watched silently, humanity and the Echo Sovereign faced their greatest challenge yet, not just survival, but trust. And in the vast, endless void, the question lingered. Could two such different beings find a common path, or were they doomed to repeat the dance of destruction forever? Peace, it seemed, was a fragile illusion. Beneath the surface of newfound alliances, old fears festered like wounds refusing to heal. On Luna Prime, in a dimly lit chamber echoing with whispers, the rogue faction convened. Their leader, a sharp-eyed Mithari named Kellen, paced with impatience. The Sovereign's transformation is a lie, he declared. It is only biding its time. When it strikes again, we will be ready. His lieutenants nodded, faces hard as stone. We have spies within the Galactic Council, Kellen continued, and we will use them to ignite chaos. Far from Luna, on Earth's capital, Ava Frost felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her every move. Her trusted aide, Marcus, approached hesitantly. Ma'am, there are reports of sabotage attempts in our fleets, he said quietly. Communications are being intercepted. Someone wants this alliance to fail. Ava's jaw tightened. Then we need to root them out before it's too late. Meanwhile, within the Sovereign's fractured mind, conflicting voices battled for control. One whispered coldly, a remnant of its old war drive. Destroy them all. They are weak. Another responded softly, an echo of the new empathy. There is strength in mercy. There is power in change. Caught between these extremes, the Sovereign's identity wavered like a flame in a storm. In the shadows of the Vindicator, Linda and Reeve prepared for a covert mission to infiltrate the rogue faction and uncover their plans. We're not just fighting an external war anymore, Linda said grimly. We're fighting for the soul of this alliance. Reeve nodded, and if we fail, everything we fought for will be lost. As they departed, Ava watched them go, a silent prayer on her lips. Deep within enemy territory, Linda's team moved like ghosts. Each step brought them closer to secrets that could shatter galaxies. They discovered plans to unleash a weapon capable of erasing entire star systems, an echo of the Sovereign's former wrath. Back on Luna Prime, Kellen smiled coldly as he watched the newsfeed. The game has begun, he murmured. Let the stars burn. The galaxy held its breath. Between hope and despair, trust and betrayal, light and shadow, the future hung in the balance. And somewhere in the void, a war machine learned the true cost of becoming human. The cold metal corridors of the rogue faction's hidden base twisted like the veins of some living organism, pulsating with tension. Linda's team moved cautiously, every step measured, every breath controlled. This was no ordinary infiltration. This was the hinge upon which the fate of billions turned. Eyes open, Linda whispered into her comlink, her voice steady despite the hammering in her chest. The weight of the mission pressed on her like a physical force. Disarm the singularity pulse or watch the galaxy burn. Reeve scanned the holographic map projected from his wrist device. The weapons chamber is just ahead, heavily guarded. They've set energy barriers and automated defense drones. It's a fortress. Linda nodded grimly. We've beaten worse odds before. We're not leaving without shutting that thing down. The Singularity Pulse was more than just a weapon. It was an embodiment of raw destruction. A sphere of swirling dark energy capable of collapsing entire star systems into an artificial black hole, erasing everything in its path. Kellen's faction intended to reset the cosmic balance by annihilating Earth and any who opposed them. Ava Frost, back on the Vindicator, was orchestrating the broader defense. Linda's team is the linchpin. We've got fleet patrols scrambled to contain any external threats, but inside that base, it's all on them. Her fingers hovered over the console, sending encrypted signals and monitoring vital signs from the field operatives. Her mind raced between strategy and fear. Trust was fragile, and the enemy had already shown they could strike from within. Deep inside the base, the rogue faction was far from idle. Kellen's cold eyes watched the unfolding events via surveillance feeds. They think they can walk in and dismantle my plans? His voice was a low hiss, filled with a venomous certainty. This weapon is the dawn of a new order, he murmured, one forged in fire and destruction. They cannot understand the necessity of chaos. His lieutenants bristled with impatience, but they followed his orders with unwavering loyalty. The Singularity Pulse hummed ominously, a dark heart ready to be unleashed. Back in the corridors, Linda's team reached the chamber entrance. Reeve tapped on the control panel, fingers dancing across the interface to disable security protocols. "Cover me," he muttered, eyes flicking between codes and sensors. Suddenly, red warning lights flared, alarms screaming through the base like banshees. "They know we're here," Linda barked. The team scrambled as mechanized guards flooded the halls, their footsteps thunderous and relentless. Gunfire erupted in brutal bursts, echoing off steel walls. Linda ducked behind a console, returning fire with surgical precision. "Reeve, status?" she shouted over the chaos. "Almost there, just a few more seconds." In the heart of the chamber, the Singularity Pulse pulsated violently. The sphere's surface roiled with dark matter, an abyss swallowing the light. Linda's breath caught. We can't afford mistakes. Suddenly, from the shadows, Kellen emerged, flanked by heavily armed soldiers. "You should have stayed out of this," he sneered. Linda met his gaze, unflinching. The galaxy doesn't belong to tyrants. Not anymore. The two forces clashed in a brutal melee, gunfire, shattered metal, and desperate tactics entwined in a deadly dance. Reeve's fingers flew over the controls. The disarmament sequence initiated. Circuits sparked, and the dark energy within the pulse began to stabilize. "Keep them off me," Reeve yelled. Linda and the team fought with every ounce of their strength. The line between survival and failure blurred with each passing second. As the Singularity Pulse's hum softened, Kellen's soldiers faltered, their resolve crumbling. With a final surge, Linda's team overwhelmed the opposition. Kellen, wounded and defeated, spat curses as he retreated into the darkness. The weapon was silenced. On the Vindicator, Ava allowed herself a breath she hadn't taken in days. "Mission accomplished," she whispered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her exhaustion. But the victory was tempered by the knowledge that this was merely a prelude. The alliance was still fragile, the enemy still out there. The true war, for trust, for survival, for the future, was just beginning. The calm after the storm was a fragile illusion. As the Vindicator cruised through the cold void, the crew knew this moment of respite was borrowed, not earned. Linda sat alone in the dim glow of the ship's briefing room, her mind a maelstrom of doubt and resolve. The Singularity Pulse had been disarmed, yes, but at what cost? Every victory came with a price. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Ava Frost's hologram flickered to life before her, sharp and unyielding as ever. "We have a problem," Ava said without preamble. Linda raised an eyebrow. "I was hoping for a moment of peace." "Peace?" Ava's tone was dry, almost mocking. "We've just proven that Kellen's faction has sympathizers inside the council. Someone leaked the base's location before our strike." The news hit like a punch. Betrayal within their ranks, a blade in the back. Linda clenched her fists. "We need to root them out before they destroy everything." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council convened in a high-security chamber. Voices hissed behind closed doors, alliances strained, and suspicion thickened the air like smoke. Sovereign Echo, the enigmatic AI advisor, projected itself beside the council leader, its digital form flickering with restless energy. The stability of the alliance is at risk, it intoned, voice calm yet chilling. Internal fractures will invite chaos. We must act swiftly. Council members exchanged uneasy glances. Trust, once their greatest asset, was now their most dangerous liability. Back on the Vindicator, Reeve pored over encrypted data, trying to trace the leak. Every lead hits a dead end, he muttered. They're ghosts, experts in erasing their tracks. Linda joined him, her eyes sharp with urgency. We can't afford to waste time. Whoever this is, they want us dismantled from within. A plan began to take shape, a covert counter-operation to expose the traitor, and a dangerous gamble that could either heal the alliance or shatter it completely. Tensions flared among the crew. Paranoia seeped into casual conversations, and once solid friendships became strained. Ava and Linda argued fiercely over tactics and trust. You want to trust everyone blindly, Ava accused. That's how we got into this mess. And you want to throw suspicion at every shadow, Linda shot back. We'll lose allies faster than we find enemies. Their clash was a mirror of the larger war, a battle not just against external foes, but the fractures within their own hearts. Late one night, as the Vindicator drifted through the starlit void, Linda found herself standing alone at the observation deck. The stars blinked cold and distant, silent witnesses to the war raging in human hearts and cosmic battlegrounds alike. She whispered to the void, "How do we fight a war when the enemy wears our face?" The coming days would test more than their weapons or strategies. They would test their faith in each other. And in the heart of darkness, the true cost of survival would be revealed. The sterile hum of the Vindicator felt heavier than usual. Suspicion hung thick in the recycled air, weaving invisible webs that trapped everyone inside their own doubts. Linda sat at the command console, fingers poised but hesitant. Every data stream, every encrypted message, every fragment of intelligence could be a clue or a trap. Reeve leaned over her shoulder. I ran a deep forensic trace on the comms logs. There's a pattern. Someone's been siphoning data for weeks, masking their digital fingerprints under layers of false trails. Linda's eyes narrowed. We need a trap, something to flush them out. Ava appeared beside them, her expression unreadable. I've prepared a bait, a false mission brief planted with deliberately false intel about a critical vulnerability in the fleet's main shield grid. Linda smiled grimly. If the leak bites, we'll know exactly where to look. The crew's tension reached a breaking point when the bait was deployed. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispers in hallways, sideways glances, locked eyes full of accusation. Even mundane tasks felt like a gauntlet. The rogue faction's shadow was everywhere, infecting trust with its poison. In a tense council meeting on the ship, Ava confronted the assembled officers. This is no time for fractures. If we allow paranoia to weaken us, Kellen wins by default. Her words were steel, but they did little to quell the storm brewing beneath the surface. Linda caught Ava's gaze afterward, a silent understanding passing between them. They were different, yet both bound by the same desperation to save what remained. Then came the breaking moment. The false intel was leaked, deliberately and quickly. The rogue faction mobilized, attempting a coordinated strike on the fleet's supposed weak point. Linda's team scrambled, intercepting the assault with precision born of exhaustion and resolve. But in the aftermath, evidence surfaced, encrypted comms traced back to an unexpected source. The betrayal wasn't an outsider. It was someone inside their closest circle. Shock rippled through the crew. Confrontation was inevitable. In the cold interrogation room, the accused stood tall yet weary. Commander Halrick, a decorated veteran whose loyalty had never been questioned. I did what I thought was right. Halrick's voice was low, trembling, not with fear but conviction. This alliance is a house of cards. I sought to protect my people, even if it meant making hard choices. Linda stared, torn between anger and an aching empathy. Was this a traitor or a man broken by war? Ava's voice cut through the silence. Your choices almost doomed us all. We fight for unity, Halrick, not division. Outside the walls of the Vindicator, Kellen watched the chaos unfold through intercepted feeds, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Divide and conquer, he mused. The oldest strategy in the universe, and yet so effective. But the alliance was not yet broken. In the darkest hour, seeds of hope and defiance quietly took root. As the crew grappled with betrayal, guilt, and the sharp sting of fractured trust, Linda knew one thing for certain. the battle was far from over. And the true enemy might not just be Kellen's faction, but the darkness lurking inside each of them. The Vindicator was no longer just a ship, it was a crucible, a place where shattered trust was tested against the unyielding demands of survival. Linda stood before the assembled crew in the central hall, her voice steady but filled with the weight of their shared burden. We've been betrayed, yes, but betrayal isn't the end. It's a call to rebuild, stronger and wiser. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some faces bore fatigue, others simmering resentment, but all shared the same hard-earned resolve. The first step was confession. Officers and crew were invited to speak openly about their doubts, fears, and suspicions. It was a risky gamble, but necessary. Ava moderated, her usual sharp edge softened by the gravity of the moment. "We can't heal wounds we refuse to show," she said. "Transparency is our armor now." Stories poured out. Hidden fears of extinction, whispers of old grudges, the unbearable pressure of endless war. It was a raw, painful catharsis. Meanwhile, Reeve and the intelligence team doubled down on their scans, monitoring not only internal chatter, but also deep space communications. "We're picking up unusual energy signatures," Reeve reported during a strategy session. "Patterns don't match anything we've cataloged." Linda's mind raced. Could Kellen's faction be allying with something, or someone, far more dangerous? "Prepare the fleet for possible contact," she ordered, "and tighten security protocols. We're no longer just fighting known enemies." The rebuilding wasn't just structural, it was personal. Linda found herself reaching out to Halric, the fallen commander, now confined but still part of their fragile community. Their conversation was tentative, filled with unspoken pain and the desire for understanding. "I fought for my people," Halric said quietly, "but maybe I forgot that in doing so, I lost sight of the bigger picture." Linda nodded. "We all make mistakes. The question is, what do we do next?" Outside the Vindicator, the void pulsed with hidden threats. Shadows shifted beyond sensor range. Unknown vessels, cloaked and silent, watched the fragile alliance with cold calculation. The war was evolving, and so must they. As night fell over the ship's observation deck, Linda gazed at the stars, their distant fires reflecting the fragile hope flickering inside her. "We'll rebuild," she whispered. "Not because it's easy, but because we have no other choice." The fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, they had a chance. The Vindicator's engine room hummed with a renewed sense of purpose. Scientists and engineers worked feverishly, driven by the desperate need to gain an edge over their unseen enemies. Linda walked through the lab corridors, passing clusters of focused faces illuminated by holographic displays that danced with data streams and schematics. The Alliance was betting everything on a new technology, a prototype quantum sensor array capable of detecting cloaked vessels and even glimpsing into subspace disturbances. Reeve caught up with her, eyes bright with cautious optimism. "If this works, we'll see what's been hiding in the shadows. For too long, we've been blind." Linda nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "We need every advantage. Kellen's faction is clever, but so are we." Suddenly, the ship's sensors flared, the quantum arrays humming to life, revealing a ghostly outline on the edge of their detection radius. A vessel unlike any they'd seen before, angular and silent, drifted in the void. No markings, no identifiable signature, an enigma wrapped in darkness. "Unknown contact," Ava announced crisply. "They're not responding to hails." Linda's heart quickened. "Prepare the defense grid, and ready a boarding party, but no rash moves. We don't know what we're dealing with." As the boarding party approached the mysterious ship, eerie silence surrounded them. The airlock opened with a whisper, revealing interiors bathed in a cold, unnatural light. Inside, strange technology pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Alien architecture fused with advanced machinery unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The team's footsteps echoed as they explored deeper, each corridor revealing cryptic symbols and evidence of a civilization both ancient and hyper-advanced. Suddenly, a holographic projection activated. A figure, humanoid but clearly not human, appeared before them. "Visitors," it spoke in perfect English, voice calm yet tinged with warning. "You tread on the threshold of powers beyond your comprehension." Back on the Vindicator, tension ran high as the boarding party relayed their findings. Linda felt the weight of their words settle like a stone in her gut. The discovery wasn't just about war anymore, it was about the very nature of existence, the fragile place humanity held in a vast and indifferent cosmos. "We're out of our depth," she admitted quietly, "but retreat isn't an option." The alien message echoed in her mind. Powers beyond comprehension. Could they harness these forces? Or would they become the next victims of a war far greater than any they had known? The line between survival and annihilation blurred, and the stakes had never been higher. The Vindicator drifted at the edge of the unknown, its crew battered but unbroken. Linda stood on the observation deck, eyes fixed on the alien ship now tethered silently beside them, a symbol of both threat and opportunity. The past months had been a relentless storm, betrayal, loss, and revelations that shattered every certainty they'd held. Yet amidst the chaos, humanity had shown its greatest strength: resilience. Inside the alien vessel's command chamber, Linda and Ava faced the enigmatic hologram again. This time, the message was different: a test, a challenge, and perhaps an invitation. "You seek survival," it said, "but survival requires evolution beyond war and fear. Will you rise or fall into oblivion like countless civilizations before?" The question lingered, heavy and impossible to answer. Back on the Vindicator, the crew worked to integrate the alien technology, the quantum sensors, the mysterious energy sources, pieces of a cosmic puzzle slowly coming together. Reeve joked nervously, "Well, if we survive this, at least we'll have the most advanced coffee maker in the galaxy." Laughter rippled through the tense atmosphere, a brief human moment of levity. But the peace was fragile. Kellen's faction was not done. They launched a final, desperate assault, not just against the fleet, but against the very idea of unity. The battle was fierce, a cacophony of light and sound that tested every ounce of courage and strategy. In the heart of the fight, Linda found herself face to face with Kellen. The man who once seemed invincible now looked tired, haunted by the cost of his ambition. "Why fight when you could join us?" he hissed. Linda's reply was simple: "Because humanity is not just about winning battles. It's about fighting for something bigger: hope." The tide turned. United, the fleet pushed back the attackers, leveraging both human ingenuity and alien technology. Kellen's forces scattered, their threat diminished but never fully extinguished. As the dust settled, Linda reflected on the journey, from fragile alliances to cosmic revelations, from betrayal to unexpected friendships. "We're standing on the edge of a new horizon," she told the crew. "Not just as survivors, but as explorers of what it truly means to be human." Ava smirked. "And maybe next time we bring snacks. Space battles really work up an appetite." Laughter filled the room again, a reminder that even in the vast, cold void, humanity's spirit burned bright. The alien ship's hologram flickered once more, now smiling. "Welcome to the future," it said. "The real journey begins now." Thank you so much for watching this incredible journey with us. If you enjoyed the story, please hit that like button, subscribe for more thrilling sci-fi adventures, and drop your thoughts or favorite moments in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Your support means the world and helps us keep bringing stories that inspire and entertain. Until next time, keep looking to the stars.